Hello, my friends. This is The Art of Prepping. Thanks for checking out this video. Hope you guys are good today. I just want to briefly speak about travel distances for the average person. And of course, when I mean average, I mean average. I'm not talking about those with extreme health conditions that maybe limit them to a very short duration. And I'm not talking about extreme athletes that allow them to go great distances over the course of one day. And that's what we're kind of looking at over the course of 24 hours. How far can the average person go without really like pulling muscles and being overly fatigued for the next day? So you're still keeping some gas in the tank, if you say, so to speak, but you're not like, limiting the person dramatically. So the average person that I've noticed can travel pretty safely between 10 to 15 miles in a day. And this is just average conditioning of the person with a load of 10 to 15 pounds on their back. Some people can do a little more, but that's just kind of what I've noticed in real life. And also when you research this, it's pretty much the same, right? And so the average person, when they're hiking or walking, they average between 2.5 to 3.5 miles per hour. So let's just round that and say the average person is traveling at about 3 miles per hour. But the problem here is that a lot of people say, well, if I just maintain that for 8 hours, even when you just kind of include all your breaks and times when you get something to eat and all that stuff, right? And you add it all up, and the total time that you're on the trail or you're traveling is 8 hours, then you would expect that you would actually get 24 miles covered. But is that really how this works? And it really isn't at all. So first and foremost, it's really unrealistic to think that you're going to really probably travel at the same speed over the entire time that you're walking throughout the day. It's unrealistic. And really, it's probably unrealistic for the average person to travel for 8 hours total in one day. I mean, you might be able to get close to it, but it's probably not going to be 8 hours. Also, you have to factor in the environment, right? So you have terrain. You might be going uphill for a good amount of time. You might have uneven pathways, or maybe you're just kind of cutting through the woods. And there could be all kinds of various obstacles that you have to cross. Bodies of water, downed trees, just all kinds of variables. It could also be very cold out. It could be snow on the ground. It could be a lot of ice, right? Or it could be the opposite. It could be very, very hot. And, you can't travel more than maybe like 20, 30 minutes without taking a break, or you're going to overheat. You also have to factor in, are you rested at the time of leaving for this journey? Or is it just something that in the middle of the night that you had to leave the house and to bug out? And if so, then you're not going to probably be as good as you would if you're fully rested. What about food? Do you have anything in your system? Or are you just kind of running on air? What about hydration? Have you had anything to drink for a while? See, there's a lot of elements here, So when people say, I'll just travel at the average speed of 3 miles per hour for 8 hours total, and I'll have 24 miles covered. It's just not based on real world information. And let me tell you, you might be lucky to probably get somewhere between 10 to 15 miles. This is just for the average person. There are people that are much more physically conditioned that can go probably a good 20 miles without much problem. And then there's the upper tier of the population, the athletic group, that could probably get 25 to 30 miles, once again, depending on terrain and weather and everything. But in more ideal conditions, there are certainly people that can walk or hike 25 to 30 miles. They're far and few in between, but those people exist. But just the average person like you and I, and I'm not trying to label you or myself, I'm just saying the average person, we probably can do 10 to 15 miles with a few pounds on our back safely without pulling muscles and without being extremely fatigued and all that. And so this is just something to consider when you're planning on bugging out. So you don't have unrealistic goals. And I'd always keep like an extra day or two of rations just in case you get injured on the way and you have to kind of slow down and all that. Things happen. So what I would invite you to do is this, to do a dry run to your bug out location on foot. Now, for some people, it's going to take a number of days, but you won't know really how long it's going to take unless you do it. And I'm sure that most people listening to this video won't do this because it's going to be that uncomfortable. But if you're curious about the question, and this is the reason I'm doing this video, because the question comes up all the time. People asking me, well, how many miles is it realistic for me to travel in one day? Well, I'm telling you, it probably isn't as much as you think it is. But you really won't know unless you actually go and you do the travel yourself. You may find that the first day you can travel 20 miles because it might be mostly downhill and there might not be any problems walking over the terrain. It might be real easy going. And so, but maybe the second day, what you'll find is that you're going mostly uphill and you have boulders that you have to kind of get around, and you might have thick patches of forest or woods that you have to navigate through. And so basically what do you have? You have various factors here that can change from day to day on your journey. And you'll also be able to see, if you do a dry run, how much stuff is really practical to carry and how much isn't. Because first off, a lot of amateurs, they bring way too much stuff because they're insecure and they don't really know what they need. But if you're experienced, you'll just bring just enough and just a little extra just in case you have an emergency or you need a backup. Just some things to think about. So anyways, I wish you guys the very best. I'm going to go ahead and get some things done here today, but I just wanted to chime in, answer this question that keeps popping up. And so just remember, the average person travels at about 3 miles per hour, and only you know how far you can travel. But it is a good estimate to think that 10 to 15 miles, a day, that's a pretty safe number just to kind of reduce the chance of you pulling a muscle, having fatigue problems and all that. But you're going to have to look at what the variables are at the time of the bug out. Otherwise, this is all just going to be a possible nightmare scenario, especially if you only brought enough to get you through a day or two and it takes you 3 or 4 days to get there. It's going to be quite miserable. So know the facts and get in shape now. Do things now to better your health so that this travel, if you ever needed to do it, would be that much more easier. I'll catch you later.